Welcome to Flow Speak Studio, where English flows naturally. Let's start speaking with confidence.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flow Speak Studio. I'm Emma, and I'm here with Alex, as always. Today's episode feels very close to real life because we're not talking about big goals or intense study plans or changing your entire routine. We're talking about small daily habits, the kind you already have, or almost have, that quietly help your English grow without stress.
Hi, everyone. And yes, this episode is important because many people believe improvement only comes from doing more studying, more pressure, more effort. But in real life, especially as adults, progress often comes from doing things differently, not necessarily doing more.
Exactly. And if you've ever thought, I don't have time to study English properly, this episode is for you. Because what we're talking about today doesn't require extra hours, extra energy, or perfect discipline. It's about small habits that fit into real days, busy days, tired days, normal days.
Days where you wake up late, drink coffee too fast, check your phone too much, and feel like you didn't do anything productive. Those days still count.
I remember a time when I felt guilty if I didn't sit down and study, but later I realized that my English was improving anyway, through tiny moments, listening while cooking, thinking in English during a walk, using one new phrase without forcing it. Those small habits were doing more than I expected.
And that's what we want to explore today. Not habits that look impressive, but habits that actually work. Habits that feel natural enough to repeat every day without resistance.
So if you're listening while resting, or walking, or doing something simple, you're already practicing one of them.
Take a breath. Relax your shoulders. This episode is not here to push you. It's here to remind you that your English can grow inside your real life.
Let's talk about those small habits and how they slowly change the way you think in English.
When we talk about small daily habits, I think it's important to start with something very honest. Most people already do things every day that could help their English, but they don't notice them or they don't value them. For a long time, I believed that if I wasn't sitting at a desk, focused with a notebook or an app, then it didn't count. And because of that, I ignored so many moments where my English was actually active.
Yes, I relate to that so much. There's this idea that learning has to look serious to be real. But some of the most effective habits are quiet. They don't feel like study, they feel like life. For example, one habit that helped me a lot was simply not turning English off when the lesson ended, letting it stay with me, in my thoughts, in my curiosity, in little reactions during the day.
Exactly. And that habit starts very small. Sometimes it's just noticing an English word in your head or hearing a phrase in a song and thinking, oh, that's interesting, without stopping everything to analyze it. Those moments don't feel powerful, but they add up.
I remember walking to the grocery store and thinking, okay, what am I doing right now? And instead of thinking it in my native language, I would gently say it in English. Not perfectly, not fast, just naturally. I'm walking. I need milk. I forgot my list. Very simple thoughts, but repeated.
That's such a good example because it removes pressure. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not trying to sound advanced. You're just allowing English to exist in your normal world. And that's a habit many people avoid because they think it's too basic. But basic repetition builds comfort.
And comfort is everything. When English feels familiar, your body relaxes, your mind doesn't panic. Another small habit for me was listening without effort. Not listening to understand every word, not pausing, not translating, just letting English play in the background while I cooked or cleaned.
Yes, passive listening gets a bad reputation sometimes. People say it doesn't work, but I think they misunderstand its purpose. It's not about learning new grammar, it's about training your ear and your nervous system to stay calm with the language.
Exactly. It teaches your brain that English is not a threat. And once that fear reduces, active speaking becomes easier, even if slowly.
I also noticed something interesting. The days I stopped trying so hard were often the days I spoke more naturally, because small habits don't create resistance. They don't ask too much from you. They just stay.
And that's why they're sustainable. Big plans are exciting, but small habits are loyal. They show up even when motivation disappears.
And I think that's an important message for anyone listening. If you want your English to grow naturally, don't look for dramatic change. Look for habits that feel easy enough to repeat tomorrow.
Even when we know that small habits work, there's still this quiet voice inside that says, this is not enough. And that voice can be surprisingly loud. I remember thinking, if I'm not studying for an hour, if I'm not pushing myself, then I'm wasting time. And that thought alone made me feel guilty, even on good days.
Yes, that guilt is very real. It's like we're measuring our effort instead of our consistency. And the inner dialogue usually sounds like comparison. You should be better by now. Other people are studying harder. Why is this still difficult for you? Those thoughts don't motivate. They freeze you.
Exactly. And when you freeze, you stop doing the small things too. You stop thinking in English for a few minutes. You stop listening casually. You stop speaking to yourself. Not because you can't, but because you feel it's pointless.
I felt that especially when my English didn't improve fast. I would say, I've been doing this for weeks. Why don't I feel fluent yet? And that expectation was unrealistic, but emotionally, it felt logical.
And that's the tricky part. Emotionally, it makes sense. We live in a world of fast results, so when language growth is slow and quiet, our brain doubts it.
Another inner conflict is the fear of doing it wrong. People ask themselves, what if I'm thinking in incorrect English? What if I'm repeating mistakes? And instead of using the language, they stop using it.
Yes, and I want to say this clearly. Using imperfect English daily is better than using perfect English once a week. Mistakes don't block progress. Silence does.
That's so true. I also noticed that when I allowed English to be messy in my head, it slowly became cleaner, without force. But when I tried to control every sentence, I exhausted myself.
And exhaustion creates avoidance. Another inner thought many people have is, I don't feel like it today. And they think that means they should stop. But small habits don't ask for motivation. They work despite low energy.
Yes, some days my only habit was hearing English while washing dishes. No notes, no speaking, and I used to judge that. Now I see it as maintenance, like stretching, quiet but necessary.
The inner dialogue changes when you stop asking, am I doing enough? And start asking, can I stay connected today? Connection is the real goal.
And once that pressure softens, habits feel lighter and more human. When we talk about habits, I think it's important to show how they actually appear in daily life. Not in theory, but in real moments. For example, at work, I noticed that I stopped preparing English and started living it in small ways. I would read a short email, and instead of translating it, I would ask myself, what is the main idea? Not every word, just the intention. That alone reduced stress.
Yes, and that's such an important shift. At work, small habits often look invisible, like rereading your own message before sending it and thinking, does this sound like me but in English? Not perfect, just natural. And over time, your tone improves without studying tone.
Exactly. Another place this shows up is in meetings. Instead of trying to speak a lot, I focused on speaking once, clearly. One sentence, one comment. And that habit built confidence faster than silence ever did.
In friendships, it's similar. You don't need deep conversations every time. Sometimes it's just reacting naturally, saying things like, that makes sense, or I didn't think about it that way. Those small reactions keep you engaged and thinking in English.
And when you're traveling, habits become survival tools. Reading signs, listening to announcements, answering simple questions. Those moments teach you real English, the kind you remember because it matters.
Yes, travel forces simplicity. You don't overthink grammar when you're tired or lost. You communicate with what you have. And that's a powerful reminder. English doesn't need to be perfect to work.
Another everyday application is internal language. Talking to yourself while doing normal things, planning your day, thinking about food, reacting to situations. That habit turns English into a companion, not a task.
And that's where growth becomes natural, because you're not adding English to your life, you're blending it into what already exists.
As you said, work, friendships, travel, personal moments, they all become classrooms without pressure.
And when English lives there, progress doesn't feel heavy. It feels normal. Before we jump into the phrases, I want to say something important. These expressions are not advanced. They're not fancy, and that's exactly why they matter. These are the kinds of phrases people use every single day, at home, at work, in their head, without thinking about grammar. When you start using phrases like these naturally, your English stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like part of your life. So let's take this slow. No pressure, just real language.
The first phrase is, I'll get to it. This phrase means, I will do it later, when I have time. But emotionally, it's very calm. It doesn't sound rushed. It doesn't sound stressed. For example, I saw your message. I'll get to it after lunch. Or, I need to finish something first, but I'll get to it. I remember using this at work for the first time and feeling relieved because I didn't have to explain everything. This phrase gives you space. It's a small habit, choosing calm language instead of panic language.
Yeah, I love that one. The next phrase is, that works for me. This means you agree, but in a relaxed way. Instead of saying, yes, okay, fine, you say, that works for me. For example, meeting at 3? That works for me. Or, let's talk tomorrow. Yeah, that works for me. I started using this because it sounded natural and confident, even when I wasn't fully confident inside. And slowly, the confidence followed.
This next one is important because it helps you stay present. Let me think about that. This phrase gives you time, and time is power in conversation. You're not saying no, you're not saying yes, you're saying, I'm human. For example, do you want to join? Let me think about that. I use this phrase when my brain needs a second, and it removes pressure instantly.
All right, here's another very daily one. I'm just getting started. This means you're in the early phase of something. You can use it for work, habits, or learning English itself. For example, I'm just getting started with this project, or I'm just getting started with my morning. I love this phrase because it allows imperfection. It tells the truth without judgment.
All right, here's another very daily one. I didn't realize that. This phrase shows openness, not weakness. For example, oh, I didn't realize that was today. Or, I didn't realize how much that mattered. I use it when learning, not just English, but life. It keeps conversations human.
The next phrase is one I use internally a lot. I'll figure it out. This is not about knowing everything. It's about trusting yourself. For example, I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Or even quietly in your head when English feels hard. This phrase builds resilience.
Here's another everyday one. That makes sense. You can use this when listening. For example, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or, now I understand, that makes sense. This phrase keeps conversations flowing and shows engagement.
This next one is great for habits. I'm getting used to it. It means something still feels new, but easier. For example, I'm getting used to speaking English at work, or I'm getting used to my new routine. I love this phrase because it respects progress without pressure.
This one is very gentle. It depends. Life isn't always yes or no. For example, can you join? Well, it depends. It allows honesty without explanation overload.
And the last phrase, that's part of the process. This phrase is emotional, not just practical. For example, making mistakes, that's part of the process. Or feeling slow, that's part of the process. I say this to myself when English feels heavy. It keeps me going.
These phrases are not meant to impress anyone. They're meant to support you. in small moments, everyday routines, and real life.
As we come to the end of this episode, I want to invite you to take a breath with us, just for a second, because everything we talked about today isn't about doing more. It's about noticing what you're already doing. So many learners believe that progress only happens when they sit down, open a book, or study hard. But real English growth, the kind that actually stays with you, usually happens quietly, in the small moments, in the habits you repeat without even realizing it. And if you're listening to this right now, that already tells me something about you. You care. You're paying attention. You're showing up in your own way. That matters more than you think.
Yeah, and I want to add something honest here. A lot of times we don't feel like we're improving, especially as adults. We wake up, we live our day, we use the same words again and again, and it can feel like nothing is changing. But growth doesn't always feel dramatic. Most of the time, it feels boring, subtle, almost invisible. I've had weeks where I thought, wow, my English feels exactly the same. And then suddenly, one day, I realized I was responding faster, or I wasn't translating as much, or I felt calmer in a conversation. And it hit me. Those small habits were working the whole time, quietly.
Exactly. And that's why we wanted this episode to feel calm, not rushed, not intense. Your English doesn't need pressure to grow. It needs consistency, kindness, and space. If all you do this week is notice one phrase, or speak to yourself in English for a few seconds, or listen without understanding everything, that's enough. That's already practice. Please don't underestimate the power of small daily habits. They don't just improve your English, they change how you feel about English.
And remember this too. You're not behind. You're not slow. You're not doing it wrong. You're learning a language while living a full life. And that's not easy. So if today's episode gave you even a tiny sense of calm or clarity or motivation, hold on to that. Let English be something that fits into your life, not something that fights against it.
Thank you for spending this time with us, for listening, for showing up, for trusting the process, even when it feels quiet. We'll be right here with you in the next episode, continuing this journey together. Until then, take it slow, stay curious, and let your English grow naturally.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment down below.